Champions Yokohama just wrapped up and there's a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. As usual, I'm going to go through each round talking about the men's side first and then the women's side. So in the round of 32, definitely the biggest upset was Lim Jong-hoon winning against Lin Renru. Lin Renru has been playing pretty well all year, and Lim Jong-hoon isn't really known for his singles results. Even though he's much more known for his doubles play, Lim Jong-hoon did take the title in Contender Zagreb and showed the world that he is also a great singles player. And clearly he did the same thing here in this event. And so now that makes back-to-back first-round exits for Lin Renru, who had been building a decent amount of momentum earlier this year. And speaking of Lin Renru's first-round exits, the person who beat him in the US Smash, Kuo Guanhong, went against Anders Lind here. And obviously Anders Lind is coming off the US Smash where he beat Wang Chuqin, so both of them will be pretty happy with their results last event. Kuo Guanhong came out really strong, and even though he didn't win the match, it was still insanely close. I think it's especially impressive that someone as young as Kuo Guanhong is able to compete with Anders Lind, because being able to counter all of the things that Lind has in his bag takes a lot of maturity. Considering the breakout runs we've already seen this year with Wenrabo and Sidorenko, it wouldn't be too surprising if Kuo Guanhong was able to go on a breakout run himself. Speaking of Vladimir Sidorenko, he went out in the first round against a refreshingly informed Zhang Peng. Zhang Peng has not been playing the greatest this year, but this was a really solid win for him. But his Chinese teammate Wenrabo didn't seem to be in quite as good form. He went against Zhao Geraldo, who has been primed to get a big win this year considering how well he's played. But once again, Wenrabo hasn't seen great results here, and he hasn't really been able to follow up his performance at Champions Chongqing. Going into the women's side, we saw Miwa drawn against Hanuka Hashimoto, and in this match we saw something displayed by Miwa that would keep coming up throughout this event. Miwa went down 2-1 against Hashimoto, which is a pretty bad position to be in against a chopper. But despite that, Miwa showed a lot of maturity and composure to fight back and win the match. And Miwa Harimoto delivering in big moments sort of became a theme in this event. Chen Yi also had a great comeback against Yoon Hye, down 2-0. And it wasn't just that she was down 2-0, but she clearly came into the match with some sort of injury. And as the match went on, it was clear that it was getting worse, and Chen Yi was very physically uncomfortable, but she was still able to fight back and win the match. We also saw a pretty intense match with Hanagoda going against Bernadette Such. And despite Hanagoda's best efforts, Bernadette Such was able to take the match in a very close decider. And once again, Hanagoda has been on the verge of getting a great win, but hasn't been able to close it out. Hanagoda has the ability to perform so well in so many of these matches, but when it gets to the very end, it just slips away from her. But obviously she's still young and she has a lot of time to work on it, and if she's able to start converting those performances into wins, she could be a real threat. Going into the round of 16, this is where we really started to see an absolutely dominant Tomokazu Harimoto. He was in absolutely unreal form, taking down a pretty strong Zhang Peng with almost no issue. And with Harimoto being the defending champion, it looked like he was en route to do it again. Alexei Lebrun was another player who looked to be in absolutely unbelievable form. After losing his first game against Darko Jorgic, he won the next game 11-0 and absolutely dominated the rest of the match. We also saw Lim Jong-hoon falling to the Korean youngster Oh Jun-sung, which pushed him into the quarterfinals, which was the furthest he'd ever made it in a Champions event. And even though Zhao Geraldo took down Wenrabo, Hiroto Shinazuka was able to get a super impressive win against him where he looked great. Going into the women's side, Miwa got a pretty hard draw for the second round to go against Chen Yi. Like I said, Chen Yi had been injured, but it didn't seem to impact her quite as much in this match, and that was pretty clear when she went up 2-0 against the top-seeded player. But Miwa was absolutely not going down without a fight, and she kept her composure to come back again. And so, only making it to the quarterfinals, Miwa had already had her fair share of tough battles. Going into the quarterfinals on the men's side, it was insane match after insane match. To start off, we can talk about Sora Matsushima versus Zhang Wujin, which was probably the match of the event. The amount of crazy rallies in this match is honestly hard to begin to describe. Zhang Wujin played absolutely stunningly to go up 3-2 against a obviously very informed Sora Matsushima. And down 3-2, it almost seemed like the match was settled. By far, the biggest criticism of Sora's game has been his mental strength. When he goes down or the momentum starts to shift against him, he has a hard time staying in the match. But over the course of this year, he's clearly been getting better, and he really put that on display here. He was able to take it to a decider, and in the 7th game, he was down 8-4. That type of scoreline is something that previously you would see Sora sort of give up on. but in this match he absolutely did not give up and he came back to win it. This was probably the most mental resilience I've ever seen out of Sora. And for this to go along with the way he's played recently, there is a real argument that Sora is the best player in the world. And we also saw his biggest developing rival, Felix Lebrun, go against Hiroto Shinazuka. Now, Shinazuka had actually already won against Lebrun earlier this year in star contender Ljubljana, and so Shinazuka came into this match reasonably confident, and it was pretty clear why. He was genuinely going toe-to-toe with Felix Lebrun, who has established himself as one of the best players in the world. And by the time it got to 2-all, Shinazuka really started to pull away. Shinazuka played fantastically, and Lebrun seemed pretty frustrated and unable to get into his game. And so for the second time this year, Shinazuka defeated Lebrun, which is no small feat. We also saw maybe the two most informed people in this tournament, Tomokazu Harimoto and Alexei Lebrun, go against each other. And despite the way that Alexei played against Jorgic, Tomokazu absolutely owned this match. He won the match 4-0, even coming back from 0-7 when Alexei Lebrun started the game on a huge run. And the last match for the men's quarterfinals was Oh Jun-sung versus Dong Cho. It was an incredibly tight match the whole time, but when it came down to the most important moments, Oh Jun-sung was really the one who was able to make the big shots to win the match. Going into the women's side, the quarterfinals weren't quite as intense. Miwa went against Shin Yubin, and Shin Yubin was never really able to get settled into the match. Between a lot of edges and a few calls from the umpire, it was hard for Shin Yubin to really get her mental into this match. I think typically this is the kind of match that would dictate a lot for Shin Yubin, but the way that it played out, I wouldn't really hold this performance too much against her. We also saw Wang Yidi looking really good against Ju Yuling, getting a revenge for Champions Doha earlier this year. After a pretty rough year, it seems like Wang Yidi has been starting to string things together now and getting back into her groove. And speaking of people who have gotten back into their groove, Shen Jingtong really looked like herself again. This year has not seen a lot of great performances from Shen Jingtong, but this was one of them. She went against Satsuki Odo, who obviously has been on fire all year long, and she absolutely dominated the match. There was really no point where it even looked like Satsuki Odo had a chance, and Shen Jingtong won 4-0. And what that meant for Shen Jingtong was that she made her way into the semifinals without dropping one game. The last women's quarterfinal was Kwaiman versus Hina Hayata, and Kwaiman was able to pretty handedly win the match. Going into the semifinals, we saw one that we definitely could not have predicted in Oh Jun-sung versus Hiroto Shinazuka. Despite how well Shinazuka had played all tournament, Oh Jun-sung really looked like he was in control of this match. You really saw a lot more of that elite shot making from Oh Jun-sung, so after a reasonable battle, he was able to defeat Shinazuka and make his way into the finals. Obviously that was not a result that people were expecting, but Oh Jun-sung just outplayed every person that he went against. And on the other side of the semifinals, you saw a much more expected matchup in Tomokazu Harimoto versus Sora Matsushima. This obviously was a blockbuster match, especially after Sora took the Japanese #1 from Tomokazu. And it wasn't just that, but Harimoto was also defending his title in his home country. And so with a lot riding on this match, it was a very intense atmosphere. Tomo took the first two games, and it looked like Sora was having a lot of trouble getting settled. But once he did, he was playing really well and was able to even the match at 2-all after getting a very tense 17-15 win in the fourth game. But Harimoto's level of play just started to outclass Sora. You could see it chipping away at his mental, and Tomo was absolutely there to take advantage. So he ended up winning 4-2, but it was still a very impressive showcase from Sora. Being in such a high pressure matchup, especially after his tough win against Jang Woo-jin, was never really spelled out for Sora to win, especially because he didn't have his coach. He was all on his own to deal with it. Even still, the mental progression that Sora has built up this year has been super important. You can tell that it's only improving, and that is absolutely going to be his key to success. On the women's side, we saw Miwa Harimoto versus Wang Yidi. The last time they met was this year in the World Cup, and Yidi very concisely won that match, so Miwa was looking to get her own win here. And after losing the first game before really getting settled, Miwa put up a really great fight against Yidi, bringing the next 3 games all to deuce. And this is where Miwa's most impressive trait in this entire tournament was really on showcase. Every time it got to deuce, she was able to just elevate her game, and that's something that's so critical to the top players in the world. That's why it's so much easier to almost get a win against Sun Ying-sha compared to actually getting one, because at the most elite level, you need to be able to close out games, and Miwa in every match she played absolutely showcased that. When you combine that with the composure she showed in her comebacks at the beginning of this tournament, you really start to see Miwa as a a genuine threat to Wang Mengyu and Sun Yingxia. The only other person who can even come close to those kinds of conversations right now is the other semi-finalist, Kuai Man. She went against a very, like I said, in-form Shen Jingtong, and Kuai Man has built up a lot of momentum throughout this year, especially after her run at the US Smash. But she was absolutely shut down by Shen Jingtong and never really found a way into this match at all. And so this is the point where you really start to see that Shen Jingtong is back to playing the way that she should be. Even with Kuai Man on the rise, it's pretty clear that Shen Jingtong isn't quite ready to give up her ranks in the Chinese national team. So going into the men's finals, it was Tomokazu Harimoto versus Oh Jun-sung. And even though Oh Jun-sung had a great run to get here that should definitely be respected, Tomo wasn't going to be stopped. He pretty handedly dismantled the young Korean and defended his title in Yokohama. And so Harimoto won a title of his own in response to Sora's US Smash title. In terms of people who aren't ready to give up their position in their national team, Tomo is definitely at the top of the list. So with the Europe Smash already starting, he's definitely going to look to carry this momentum into that event. And with how well he played, it's hard to say that that's something that he can't do. After a pretty rocky 2026, Harimoto has really found himself in the position to be great again. And on the women's side, his sister Miwa went against Shen Jingtong. And once again, Miwa showed the elevated level of play she can reach at the end of a game. Shen Jingtong looked unshakable the entire event, but when she got into this match, it was a whole different story. Miwa was able to contend in every rally and fight for every point, and it was just too much for her. She had just reached a level of power, composure, and creativity that Shen Jingtong couldn't keep up with. And so, against the defending champion, Miwa won her second champion's title in a row. And I think that this title is even more meaningful than her one in Chongqing, because Miwa's biggest struggle has always been playing against top Chinese players. And in this event, she won against 3 of the best. It was really proof that Miwa doesn't just have the ability to get individual wins against these players, but also to string those wins together to win a title. And so, like I said, Miwa has become a very serious threat in the sport, and even more so in the world rankings because of Sun Yingxia's injury. Because she has to sit out this event and the Europe Smash, and she got such great results in them last year, her world ranking points will be going down by almost 3,000. And so where Sun Yingxia seemed absolutely untouchable before, it's becoming more of a reality that Miwa or Wang Mengyu could actually usurp the world number 1. And even though they could take the rank, they're still definitely a ways away from being the best player in the world. Sun Yingxia has shown all year that she deserves the rank of the world number 1, and even if that does get taken away from her, it's hard to argue that she isn't still the best. And so that wraps up just about everything I have to say about Champions Yokohama. Let me know what you think about the event and how it changed your view on the people that played. But yeah, that's all I've got, so thank you.